All right, everyone, we have very happy breaking news. That is, affirmative action for the purposes of college admissions in the United States is now defunct. It's been killed by the Supreme Court. They ruled about as I expected them to rule. I expected them to rule in favor of the plaintiffs, and I expected, as I predicted a few days ago, a 6-3. That's what we got. So I'm taking the win on my predictive analysis. They didn't go massively broad. I was hoping they would go even beyond the scope of education, but they didn't narrow it even quite as much as I expected them to. This effectively hazards race-based admissions litmus tests in all universities and colleges in the United States that are either public, so it's public university or something, or they take public money, so taxpayer money. That's the case in Harvard. Of course, you can have a private school, but they're getting grants from the government for research, for development, etc. Well, the taxpayers shouldn't be funding your racist discrimination against white and Asian people now, should they? It's been a long time coming. Finally, we've got at least another nail in the coffin of this discriminatory practice. You'll probably see future litigation. I don't expect that they won't try to find legal workarounds for this. Of course they will. And the 6-3 was actually for the University of North Carolina. With Harvard, it was a 6-2 decision. Ketanji Jackson, and rare credit where credit is due to a far leftoid justice, especially one appointed by Joe Biden, she did the honorable thing and recused from the case, still issuing an opinion with regards to it, and issuing, of course, her vote in the other paired case. But all is well at the moment. I would like to thank the Trump Supreme Court, because 3 of the justices that voted in favor of ending affirmative action's long-term discrimination against white and Asian people happen to have been granted to you by Donald Trump. I'm wondering whether the DeSantis fans will point that out, by the way, when they cheer this decision on. Much like with other decisions, you got Bruin for a reason. I believe this is the right thing for the United States going forward. Affirmative action was always unconstitutional. In fact, I would extend it far further than this. Any business that takes public money shouldn't be engaged in similar hiring practices. ESG overlaps with it, etc. We're seeing the many-headed hydra of leftoidism try to use IDPOL to crack people apart and give favorable treatment to individuals largely based on ideology or on IDPOL. That needs to end. It's literally, I don't like to use this term because usually it's used in the context of flag-waving, apple pie-eating, gung-ho, hamburger Americana, but it's quite literally un-American. The civic founding, the principles of the New World, were not the same as the Old World. People could come together, and as long as they were doing their job, they were producing, etc., etc., they lived in harmony to the best of their ability while under attack by various foreign entities and disease and the climate, of course, at the time. They did the best that they could to form a better community, to form a more perfect union. You can't really have that when a person is going to a college and they've got a perfect score on their SAT, 20 AP courses, the ultimate whiz kid, but they happen to have been born with the wrong skin color, or they happen to have been born Asian, of course, of any particular persuasion, and they're discriminated against because individuals don't recognize them as BIPOC, black, indigenous, people of color, in other words, colored people, literally switched around. It was never a good decision to allow affirmative action to exist in the first place. Lower courts, unfortunately, have repeatedly upheld it. Finally, the Supreme Court had the balls, had the wherewithal to say, you know what? Fuck. Affirmative action can't really be defended. There is no defensible basis for this. A public school, a college, it's paid for in part by public money, or a group that is teaching students and is paid for in part under grants or whatever, again, by taxpayer money, can involve itself with racial discrimination. How fucking cut and dry can you possibly get? If anything, the court's reluctance to take up similar cases in the past is the only reason that affirmative action has existed this long. I have a feeling they kicked that can down the road because they wanted a few decades to see how much of an impact it would have. Guess what? It doesn't really have much of an impact. You have people, by the way, can I please issue one other proclamation here? I'm a little bit giddy about this. I'm very happy about the decision overall. I give it a 9 out of 10. I just wish they would extend it beyond the educational realm because affirmative action in any form of hiring should be outlawed completely. What about all those people that applied to Harvard or Yale or any of these other schools over time. Perfectly qualified, they fall well within the SAT, AP scores, etc. to get into one of these top-level schools, or even just a reasonably good school, but they were kept out of it because the school wanted somebody to be there because the school wanted to be more diverse. In other words, it didn't want the Asian student or the white student who had a perfect score. They wanted the black student who simply did well. Are there going to be lawsuits in the future over what is now remarked upon by the Supreme Court to be racial discrimination? Unfortunately, it's going to be hard to prove some of those cases, but in some cases, I think it'll be a little bit easier. I would like to see a tidal wave of lawsuits against these schools by aggrieved students, of which there are now, at this point, after so many years of affirmative action, literally millions of them. Well, that's going to go over really well for them. I guess you'll have to dip into the endowments after all. Not to lower tuition like you should be doing already, but to pay off all of the aggrieved parties that you're going to have to settle with. Best thing for them, really. So I'm glad affirmative action is dead. Again, 6-3 decision, effectively shit canning it for the purposes of a public educational system in the United States. Yes, even at the college level, where public funding is involved. Now, if you have a completely private school, which means it's probably not allowed to be accredited by the Department of Education or whatever, if you have a private school, you can discriminate all you want. If you have a private school that's a historically black school, yeah, you can choose to admit only black people if you want. That's perfectly fine. No taxpayers are funding it. That's okay. Women's only college or something like that, something based on gender. But if there is taxpayer money involved, my taxes should not be going to an institution that discriminates against people based on the color of their skin. It's as simple as that. And by the way, there is no such thing as reverse racism. It's just racism, and that's the long and short of it. So I'm celebrating. I'm very happy about this decision. You can probably fucking tell. That's about all. Peace out.